All right, let's look at a third method here for solving a quadratic. And we have something we're going to talk about today called the quadratic formula. So let me first start by giving a problem that I want you to factor first. So if I gave you this equation, x squared plus 3x plus 7 equals 0, and I said, let's solve this by factoring. So I would come through here and I would start my factoring. So factors of 7 are 1 times 7, but I can't, notice they don't add up to 3. I'm gonna get an 8 if I were to add them. So I'm unable to factor this. I also can't use the square root method because I have both an x squared term and an x. So I need another method to find out my answer. So in comes what we call the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is this formula right here, okay? And it looks a little bit messy, but we are going to take values out of the equation and just plug them in and use our calculator for much of this work. So this equation, notice it says x equal. It will find the values of x. Now, sometimes we get whole numbers when we do this, and sometimes we get decimals. But the ultimate important thing here is we need to have you want to have your equation set to 0. Let me fix that a little bit more. Equation set to 0. So I cannot do this until I rearrange my problem and get 0 on one side of the equation. Okay, let's look at number 1. So I first see, I'm going to solve the quadratic formula. I have a 0 right here, which is great. So notice in my formula, I need to know the b value, the a value, and the c value. So remember that the number in front of x squared is a, the number in front of the number in front of x is b, and the last number is c. So I'm going to use 3 when I have an a in the formula, 10 when I see a b, c is 8. Okay, so this formula reads negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. Okay, let's plug in. So x equals, so negative, now write your b value. So it's going to change the sign on the b value. So if it was negative, it would have changed to positive. Plus or minus, write a big square root symbol. So b squared. So I always recommend you use parentheses. So b is 10. So there's b squared minus 4, and then in parentheses multiply by a. So I'm going to put in a parentheses times 3. The formula is times c, which is 8. And then all over 2 times a, and the a value is 3. Okay, let's simplify just what's under parentheses. Okay, so my next step is I'm going to have x equals negative 10 plus or minus. Now grab your calculator and calculate what I have highlighted. So 10 squared, and I just type it in one line on my calculator. 10 squared minus 4 times 3 times 8. Now it depends on your calculator, but as to what you end up getting here. So 10 squared minus 4 times 3 times 8, and I get 4. All of that evaluates to 4. The rest of the formula is over, so let's go ahead and do 2 times 3. We get 6. Okay, next step, let's take the square root of 4. Well, 4 is a perfect square, so the square root of 4 is 2. So my next line is going to read x equals negative 10 plus or minus 2 divided by 6. Okay, now I'm going to handle the plus or minus. Okay, so one of them will look like this. One of them will read x equals negative 10 plus 2 over 6. The other one is x equals negative 10 minus 2 over 6. So you're separating out the plus, the addition of the two numbers, and the subtraction of the two numbers. Okay, let's go back to the addition. So evaluate negative 10 plus 2. So that gives me negative 8. And so negative 8 divided by 6, 8 divided by 6 is 1.3. Now here's what I want us to round to. Let's go ahead and follow these directions. Let's round to the nearest hundredth. So if I rounded that, I would get negative 1.33. Second equation, I'm going to do negative 10 minus 2, which will give me negative 12. And then negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. So here are my two solutions using the quadratic formula. All right, we get a decimal and then an integer. Okay, so the key here is that formula. And so you're going to need to know that formula. So I would write it down several times as you work through this. And there's a song we're going to do in class that will help you memorize it. Okay, moving right along. Number 2. Step 1 is great. I already have it equal to 0. So I'm going to write out the A, the B, and the C value. So the A value is 1. The B value is 2. And C is 1. Okay, so X equals negative, and then B is 2. So it'll read negative 2 now. Plus or minus, big square root sign. So the formula is b squared, so in parentheses 2 squared minus 4, and then parentheses a is 1, c is 1. All of that divided by 2 times a, so I'll do 2 times 1 in a minute. Okay, evaluate what's under the square root sign. So 2 squared minus 4 times 1, that's 0. So I now have x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2 times 1 is 2. We'll take the square root of 0. Well, it's 0 again. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus 0 over 2. Now, I can write both equations, and let me do that, but it's really not going to make a difference. So if we branch out the plus or minus now, so it would read negative 2 plus 0 divided by 2. The other one would read negative 2 minus 0 divided by 2. Well, either way, I get negative 2 over 2, right? Either way, I get negative 2 over 2. And see how I get the same thing here? So there's really just one answer. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So I wouldn't write that twice because it's the same exact number. So this is an example of a one solution quadratic versus the first one where we had 2 solutions. Okay, let's keep going. Number 3. Step 1, I do not have it set equal to 0. So let's move the 6 over here to the other side. So I have 4x squared minus 3x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so now I need A, B, and C. So A is 4. B is negative 3. C is negative 6. Okay, x equals negative, now B is negative 3 this time, so I'm going to go like this initially. If you're comfortable knowing that we'll switch to a positive 3, you can skip straight to that step. But initially, I'll write that out. So negative b plus or minus the square root, parentheses, b squared. So negative 3 parentheses squared minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 6. Divide all over 2 times 4. All right, we are next going to simplify the square root symbol. And I'm going to simplify the negative 3. So I have now positive 3 plus or minus. So let's calculate what's under the square root symbol. So negative 3 squared is positive 9. 9 minus 4 times negative 6 is 105. So 105, all divided by, let's do 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, now let's do square root of 105. So I'm going to switch my screen to an online scientific calculator here. So I'm going to type in here, I'm going to do, let me see if I can't write on that. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just type in the square root of 105. Okay. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to go back. I'm sorry. Here's what I want to do first. oops. I want to separate this out because I want you to use your calculator in a minute. I want you to first go like this. Let's separate out the plus or minus. Let's do 3 plus the square root of 105 over 8. And let's do 3 minus the square root of 105 over 8. Because you're going to get a decimal with 105. And so here's how I want us to work this. I want to use my scientific calculator. I'm going to type 3 plus the square root of 105 and hit enter and then hit divided by 8. Because I need to ultimately, I'm going to go to the directions, round to the nearest hundredth. So I don't want to round several times. Okay, so 3 plus the square root of 105 divided by 8. So do the same thing on your calculator. 3 plus, there's the square root symbol, 105. Oops, I didn't hit my 0. Let me back up. 3 plus the square root of 105. And this online calculator automatically gets me that. Okay, so you should get 13.2469. And then I'm going to do divided by 8. So I'm getting 1.65586. Now I'm ready to round. So I'm going to call that 1.66. All right, so let's do the same thing on the minus approach. 3 minus 105 divided by 8. Okay, so let's clear that out. 3 minus the square root of 105 equals that negative number, negative 7.24, divided by 8 equals. Oh, I didn't do it. Okay, sorry, I'm not used to using this calculator. 3 minus the square root of 105 equals divided by 8. I think it's going to get it. All right, negative 0.91058. Round to 2 spots, so that would be negative 0.91. So this is going to be negative 0.91. And there are your 2 solutions. Okay, so I didn't want to round 105 and then round again because I might have an error due to rounding, so I would recommend we calculate it this way. Okay, I would like you to, let me see how many more examples we have. I would like you to pause this video and then come back, and I'm going to kind of work through them silently, and then we can, if you have questions, you can reach out and we can talk about questions individually. All right, so pause, and I'd like you to get started. Okay, A, negative 3. B is negative 7. C is 0. There is no C value. Okay, I have x equals negative b. B is negative 7. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a. All right, this is just 49. Now, the square root of 49 is exactly 7, so I'm going to do one more step here. I'm going to say 7 plus or minus 7 over negative 6. Okay, and then I can do these 2 equations. 7 plus 7 over 6. Or 7 minus 7 over 6. So this one here turns out to be 14 over 6. 14 divided by 6 is a repeating decimal. So in line with rounding, we're going to round to 2 decimal spots. So 2.33. 7 minus 7 is 0. Well, 0 divided by 6 is 0. So we have 2 solutions. One is 0 and one is 2.33. And that's fine to have 0. 0 is a place. Remember, visually, 0 is on the graph, so it's going through the origin at some point. Okay, I'm going to move on to number 5. If you have an answer, feel free to fast forward to the end. Got to move over C. Oops, that should say plus. Okay. Okay, so carefully plug your numbers in. Okay, so there's my negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, so that really gives me positive 3 plus or minus. Okay, under the radical, I have 25. So that's a negative 4. Square root of 25 is another perfect square. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as 3 plus or minus 5. Square root of 25 is 5. Okay, now I'm going to make two equations. I'm going to have x equals 3 plus 5 divided by 4. The other one is x equals 3 minus 5 divided by 4. Okay, 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 4 is a half, but we're going to round it to a decimal again. So that's going to be negative 0.5. Actually, I'm not rounding. I'll just convert to a decimal. So my solutions are positive 2, excuse me, and oh, shoot, I realized I made a mistake here. Hopefully you saw my mistake. I didn't carry down my negative. So let me make a couple of changes. This 4 is negative, which makes that 4 negative, which makes the answer negative. This 4 is negative, which makes this 4 negative, so this is really a positive. Okay, that's better. I just was going a little too fast. Okay, last one. I already have I already have the equation set to 0. A is 2, B is negative 24, and it looks like C is 3. Okay, quadratic formula. X equals negative b, negative 24, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 3. All of that divided by 2 times a, which is 2. Okay, the negative 24 will turn positive. Now I'm going to figure out what all of that evaluates to under the parentheses. All right, let's see. I am ending up with 552. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, 552, if I do it on my calculator real quick, is a decimal. So here's where I'm going to switch over to my calculator. So let me write the two, I guess, calculations we're going to do. We're going to take 24 and we're going to add the square root of 552 and then divide it by 4. Then we're going to go back and take 24 and minus the square root of 552. Okay, because you're taking care of the plus or minus. Okay, let me switch over to my calculator. All right, clear. Okay, so it is 24 plus the square root of 552. So I get about 47.49. I'm going to hit equals on this calculator, and I need to divide by 4. So it looks like I'm getting an 11.873. So rounding to the nearest hundredth, I'll call that 11.87. Oops. All right, so this is the addition. I had 11.87. Let's go back and do the subtraction. Okay. I'm going to be doing 24 minus the square root of 552 equals. And then I'm going to divide by 4. So it looks like it's about 1.26, but I'm going to round that to 0.126. Let's round it to the 2 spots, so that would be 0.13. So my second answer looks like 0.13. Okay. I think that's it, yes. So if you have questions or you want to go over how to use your calculator, those are excellent things we need to discuss. So feel free to ask me in class or send me an